I'm sad. I'm frustrated. I'm angry. I'm angry not only at the police brutality, but also all the excuses that are being used to defend it. I'm angry that there are some out there who are not angry enough or angry at all at the situation we're in. And I know a lot of us are exhausted trying to explain to people the seriousness of the situation. I know a lot of us have been arguing for years, for decades, that black people should not be murdered, only to be met by people responding, but what about this? But what about that? Or some other BS excuse. But the bottom line is what happened to George Floyd was horrific, but unsurprising. What happened to Breonna Taylor was horrific, but unsurprising. Nina Pop, Dana Martin, the list just continues on and on and on, all these pointless killings. And I know people are frustrated with the riots and the destruction of property, but if you're criticizing that, but not also speaking up about the police brutality, we have a very serious problem here. Because the unrest is a symptom. It is a result of the inaction in the face of the devaluation of black lives in this country. If you want the unrest to stop, you need to target the cause. And as a country, we all supposedly celebrate Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., but then so many of us turn around and spit in the face of everything he stood for. And I want to read a quote quickly about what he said specifically about riots. Certain conditions continue to exist in our society which must be condemned as vigorously as we condemn riots. But in the final analysis, a riot is the language of the unheard. And what is it that America has failed to hear? It has failed to hear that the plight of the black poor has worsened over the last few years. It has failed to hear that the promises of freedom and justice have not been met. And it has failed to hear that large segments of white society are more concerned about tranquility and the status quo than about justice, equality, and humanity. And so in a real sense, our nation's summers of riots are caused by our nation's winters of delay. And as long as America postpones justice, we stand in the position of having these recurrences of violence and riots over and over again. Social justice and progress are the absolute guarantors of riot prevention. And so there's a lot in that quote by Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. He said that the plight of the black poor has worsened over the last few years, but here we are decades later and we have these riots over and over again. We have this happening again. It's a real problem when people prioritize tranquility and the status quo above things that truly matter: justice, equality, humanity. And as long as we continue to ignore the violence against black people and the systemic devaluation of their lives, this will just continue into the future over and over again. For instance, as an analogy, if someone is suffering from domestic abuse for years and years, and one day they finally hit back, heck, I don't even think the person hitting back is not in the wrong. How can you be mad at people who have been abused by society for so long when they finally stand their ground? And the fact is, the people who are out there rioting make up a small percentage of the people out there, because the vast majority, the overwhelming majority of protesters the overwhelming majority of them are protesters who are protesting peacefully. And when you're listening to news about the riots, I just want people to keep in mind that there are no limits to what our government and our police forces will do to craft their own narrative and to escalate the situation further. There have been multiple documented cases of undercover cops instigating violence and destruction of property to frame protesters and basically attempt to legitimize their continued police brutality against them. And so, even in the midst of George Floyd being killed by that shit stain of a cop kneeling on his neck, there have been multiple videos of cops detaining peaceful protesters and kneeling on their necks. If it wasn't for the age of cell phones and video recordings, cops would be getting away with all of this. Heck, they've gotten away with this for decades, but I'm so frustrated. We have a situation in Louisville just yesterday where police shot into a crowd because they claimed they were fired upon, which is a total BS. All witnesses say there were no shots fired before the cops decided to open fire. But even if somebody in the crowd was shooting at the cops, you don't shoot into a crowd. This is basic stuff. They killed a black man, David McAtee, and he was a restaurant owner A black restaurant owner who always gave free meals to cops whenever they came into his establishment. And this is what he gets from them in return. I mean, we have police shooting peaceful protesters in the face with rubber bullets. People have gone blind. I'm just angry. I'm angry. I'm angry even though all things being said, I have it pretty good when it comes to dealing with my identity as a straight Asian male. I've only had 3 run-ins with the cops. The first one, they tried framing me for something so sloppily that I got thrown out of court. The second time, I was riding in a car with my Latino friend for the first time, and we were stopped less than 2 minutes after we started driving for having a broken taillight, which of course we didn't. I've sat in my dad's car for almost 3 decades, and nothing like that has ever happened. So I understand my privilege. Third time, third run-in with a cop. A white man called the police using his police connections. I don't know if he had connections at all. Either way, he just called the police and they showed up at my old job to threaten me and my boss. And what I'm trying to get through with these 3 examples is I'm trying to make 2 points. 1, the cops are not friends to people of color. And number 2, despite having several run-ins with cops, I've never been in a situation where I was terrified for my life. And I will never understand what it's like to be black and to fear for my life and fear for the life of my loved ones. But I don't have to. I don't have to sympathize with their situation. We don't need to be black to be outraged on their behalf. We don't need to be black to help where we can, to show solidarity, to try to change racist family members' minds or friends' minds, to protest, to donate. I don't understand how people can so callously dismiss the black community's concerns and outrage, but it is our duty as human beings to speak up and protest when injustice occurs. And I mean, I'm at a point where I would never call the cops because I know if there is a black person around, just in the vicinity, they have a chance of dying, even if they're completely unrelated to whatever I would be calling the cops about. Even if my own life is in danger, I don't think I would call the cops because I don't trust them. And I hope people out there will show some restraint before calling the cops. Don't even get me started with Amy Cooper, but I mean, I'm just so angry about all of this. And I understand all of your anger as well. As an important note, a friend of mine pointed out to me that black men who are killed receive a lot more coverage than black women, non-binary, and trans black people. That the financial support black men's families receive afterwards for funerals, burial expenses, grief counseling, and for court proceedings is always more than with non-men. And I'm obviously not saying that we talk about these black men too much, but we also need to talk about all the other black bodies who have been killed as well. I already mentioned Breonna Taylor, but we have Claire Legato, Miriam Carey, Kiki Fantroy, Jordan Kofer, Chantel Davis, Brooklyn Lindsay, Corin Gaines, Tarika Wilson, Zoe Spears, Paris Cameron, Darnisha Harris, and this is just a fraction of the people who we must also mourn and who we must also fight for. It's just a fraction. I can't. And as of now, I'm personally unable to go protest because I live with people who are at very high risk for severe reactions to coronavirus. So I really appreciate everyone who is out there protesting. I hope you can all stay safe out there. I'll include a link below to Teen Vogue's guide on what to do and what to know before heading to a protest. They did a great job there. But if you have any ideas or any suggestions that isn't covered by that, please leave that in the comments below. If you're like me and also can't make it out there, I've included a few links in the description below where you can donate to this cause. I'll also include a link to a Google Doc where you can donate to bail funds and legal help for various cities. What else? Due to the way I've heard YouTube works, I've kept ads on for this videos because YouTube actively pushes videos that are monetized, and I'd like for this to reach as many people as possible. But obviously, any ad revenue made from this video will be donated to these causes. Once again, just thank you to those who are out there protesting, and I hope you stay safe. And, yeah. I don't know what else to say. This is just... I mean... Again, we're just unsurprised by all this, but still heartbroken. And I hope we see the real change that we need soon. Stay safe out there. Stop killing black people, and yeah, stay safe out there.